by pointing out the reality of Israel. They had done evil in the sight of the Lord. They had turned away from God. And because of that, God's protection wasn't with them. Because they had rejected him, he did not impose himself. And the nations around them, especially the Midianites, it was a terrible thing. They didn't come and conquer the land, but they would harass them. Every year at the time of the harvest, they would come and raid the land. And because of that, we find this young man in the wrong place, because it was the time of wheat harvest. And those of you who are farmers or who know something about agriculture will know that wheat and grapes don't match harvest times. Wheat is harvested quite a bit earlier than grapes. So this young man by the name of Gideon decided, I have some wheat to thresh. What better place to do it than in the wine press? Nobody is going to be looking there. So he's there, thrashing his wheat, when suddenly, verse 12 tells us, this is Judges chapter 6, verse 12. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him and said to him, the Lord is with you, you mighty man of valor. This is interesting because he is kind of in hiding, right? He's gone to the place where he knows nobody's going to look for him, and he's hiding there. But yet the angel of the Lord calls him a mighty man of valor. Gideon says to him, O my Lord, if the Lord is with us, why then has all this happened to us? And where are all his miracles which our fathers told us about, saying, did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt? But now the Lord has forsaken us and delivered us into the hands of the Midianites. Gideon says, if God really is with us, then why are we in this miserable state? Why is it that all the miracles that we've heard about, that God performed to protect his people, to deliver them, why is it that we are not seeing any of that? We are not seeing any evidence of God's presence with us. Verse 14, then the Lord turned to him and said, go in this might of yours, and you shall save Israel from the hand of the Midianites. Have I not sent you? So he said to him, O my Lord, how can I save Israel? Indeed, my clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house. And the Lord said to him, surely I will be with you, and you shall defeat the Midianites as one man. Lord, who am I? I'm insignificant. I mean nothing. It's not just me. My clan is the weakest in the tribe. And I am the least in my father's house. How can I do any of that? But it's interesting, he forgot what God had said at the end of verse 14, when he said, go in this might of yours, and you shall save Israel from the hand of the Midianites. Have I not sent you? Have I not sent you? That's what God asks. We know that Gideon has some hesitations. We know the story. He asks God for a sign. Show me that it's really you. I don't want to go on something like this and make a fool of myself. I don't want to go on a suicide mission. What is it that you want me to do? How do you want me to do it? Show me that it's really you who's calling me. So God gives him a simple thing. Okay, take a bunch of wool, put it out on the threshing floor overnight. And if in the morning the wool is wet and the ground is dry, you will know that I am sending you. I find it interesting the way God does things. Because when it came right down to it, Gideon came out in the morning and the wool was not damp. It was drenched. Because he took it and squeezed it and filled a bowl with water. God did not want any doubt to remain in his mind. But Gideon still was hesitating. Lord, just help me out here. I'm sorry, I'm still hesitating a little bit. Can we do the reverse tonight? The ground should be wet and the wool should be dry. You know, maybe the wool just kind of soaked up all the humidity during the night and it got soaked in, and then there was a little bit of a breeze in the morning, it dried the ground, but the wool was still soaked. Maybe that's what it was. I just want to make sure. So the next morning, the wool is dry and the ground is wet with dew. There's no doubt. It's clear. And Gideon finally, after a few steps, proceeds to do what God called him to do. And he does what was normally done in those days. There was no email, there was no text messaging, there was none of that technology. So to send a message to everybody, they blew the trumpet, a call to war. And 32,000 people answered the call. Wonderful. But God says, no. You forgot one step. See, that's something that God had instilled from the very beginning of the Israelite nation as they came back from Egypt. If you are going to go to war, there are several things that you need to do. And one of them was call out to all of those who are afraid and tell them to go home. I don't want anyone involved who would be scared. If they don't trust me, I don't want them in the battle. Lack of faith discourages those around. My lack of faith would have an effect on the people that surround me. And God didn't want that to happen, especially in a situation where dependence on God was absolutely necessary. The interesting thing is, when the call for war comes out, of course the Midianites find out about it too. And they came with over 120,000 people. You see the disparity? 120 or 130,000 compared to 22,000? Not a good outcome. At least it doesn't seem like it. So, $22,000 people returned out of the 32,000. Only 10,000 remained. Now the odds are even worse, because we were starting from 32,000 against over 120,000, and now we're down to 10,000. Although on the other side, the numbers haven't changed. And God says, there are still too many. I don't want it to be in anyone's mind the possibility that they would say, we did it. I want him to know beyond the shadow of a doubt that they didn't do it, but that I, the Lord, have delivered you. The people are still too many. Bring them down to the water, and I will test them for you there. Then it will be that of whom I say to you, this one shall go, the same shall go with you. And whoever I say to you, this one shall not go with you, the same shall not go. They go down to the creek. These men are getting ready to go into battle. And they don't know when the next time is that they will be able to stop to take a drink. And they are tested. What is going to be your reaction? How are you going to proceed? And God took those who just filled their hand with water and brought it to their mouth and said, those are the ones that you shall take with you. They are eager to go. They trust me to provide for them. Those are the ones that you shall take. Out of 10,000, 300 men. Verse 7, chapter 7, in verse 7, God says to Gideon, by the 300 men who lapped, I will save you and deliver the Midianites into your hand. Let all the other people go, every man to his place. Just in case, God tells Gideon the next night, go down by the camp of the Midianites. Just get close and listen to what they're saying. And he hears two men having a conversation. And their conversation is simple. I had a dream. And there was this loaf of bread that came down and fell on our camp and flattened it. Weird dream, don't you think? And the other one says, yeah, we know what that is. That is the hand of Gideon coming down and destroying us. This is very interesting because Gideon was, remember, his clan was the least in his tribe, and he was the least in his father's house. And yet the Midianites know who Gideon is, and that they don't stand a chance against him. God is trying to encourage Gideon and relay to him the message that he is with him and will be with him all through this process. And I remember as a child thinking about this. Gideon gets his 300 men, divides it in three groups, and they approach the Midianite camp with a clay jar with a torch in it. Doesn't shine too bright, does it? And a sword in the other hand. And when they get close to the camp, they break the clay jar, and now they have a torch shining bright, and their sword ready. And 300 men. You know, I remember thinking, boy, they were really good warriors. They went in and they started fighting and they killed everybody. But when you read the story, the reality is the Midianites and others that were with them got confused. because they heard these men shouting, and they saw all these lights around the camp, and they didn't know who was who, and they started fighting one another, and most of them fell on the battlefield in that camp at each other's swords. 300 men against over 120,000. There's another story in the Gospel of Matthew. That I would like to share with you. And I'm sure you're very familiar with this story. It's chapter 14 of Matthew. Jesus had just received news that John the Baptist had been killed by Herod. And he tried to go away to a quiet place with his disciples. I don't know if you realize, but John the Baptist was Jesus' cousin. Plus, John was very special to him because he was the one that God had sent to prepare the way for him, for his ministry. They tried to go to a deserted place, but by the time they got there, there was already a crowd waiting for him. And Matthew chapter 14 and verse 14 tells us, when Jesus went out and he saw a great multitude, he was moved with compassion for them and healed their sick. Jesus, even though he was needing some quiet time with his disciples, could not leave the crowd unattended and minister to their needs. Then evening came, and Jesus says, "This is a deserted place, and the hour is already late. Send the multitudes away that they may go into the villages and buy themselves food." This is what the disciples tell Jesus. Send them away. It's getting late. If they're going to get any food, they better get going now. Otherwise, there won't be anything left. Everything will be closed. But Jesus said to them, they don't need to go away. You give them something to eat. Why are you sending them away? You feed them. And they said, we have here only 5 loaves and 2 fish. I've seen varying sizes of loaves of bread, but I'm yet to see a loaf of bread that would be sufficient to feed 100 people. I mean, you can cut it down that small and give 1 piece to everybody, but believe me, that's not going to touch the hunger that people may be feeling. So that doesn't seem to make sense. And by the way, there were way more than 100 people. Verse 21 tells us that there were 5,000 men, besides women and children. If every man came with his wife, the number has just doubled to 10,000. Maybe not all of them have come with their wives, so maybe the number isn't that high. But even if it was just 5,000 people, 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, unless they were blue whales, I don't think you could feed that many people with that much food. And Jesus says, bring them here. He commanded the multitude to sit down on the grass, and he took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he blessed and broke and gave the loaves to the disciples, and the disciples gave to the multitude. So they all ate and were filled, and they took up 12 baskets full of the fragments that remained. And I find this very interesting because it doesn't just say that they took up 12 baskets. It says 12 baskets full. It's not just that 12 people went with the basket and each one got a piece of bread on it. Out of that, out of 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. There was also one time Jesus was at the entrance of the temple with the disciples. And they were watching people, just watching what was going on, nothing much happening. And Jesus saw this woman, this widow, very quietly and discreetly approaching the offering box and dropping 2 little coins in quietly and walking away. And Jesus called the attention of the disciples. Look, did you see that? Did you see that? She just dropped 2 coins in the offering box. She's given more than all the other people combined. What? Jesus, did you miss the other guy that came with that big bag of money and dumped it noisily into the box to make sure that everybody saw how much he gave? Quite a generous man. Did you miss that? This woman, just because she dropped 2 little coins, you consider that a lot? And Jesus said, they gave of their abundance, but she gave all she had. Full, total, complete commitment. Sometimes we tend to think that we are very insignificant. We are not capable of doing anything because we have no training, because we don't have the means to do things, because maybe we are past an age where we feel like we are capable of doing something, and we feel that I'm just going to sit on the sidelines and watch because I can't do anything. Gideon couldn't do anything. He was insignificant. That woman, I mean, I'm sorry, but in terms of the needs of the temple, what would those 2 coins do? She might as well have kept them. But she gave what she had. Of her apparent insignificance compared to others, she gave her all. She gave everything. And that little lunch, actually, Mark in his gospel tells us that that was a little boy's lunch. He had brought a little snack. And then Jesus asked, let's use that. And I suspect the little boy probably thought, well, Jesus wants my lunch. Sure, I'll give it to Jesus. So Jesus can't eat something. I won't have anything, but at least Jesus has something. But the reality was way beyond what he could imagine. How much of a difference can we make in God's kingdom? What impact can we, each of us, have? There are many stories of and please don't take offense to this, I'm not picking on anybody, but little old ladies who, they're past the age of being useful. They really can't do anything anymore. I mean, they've done a lot, but now they just let them rest. Let them stay home. Let them stay home and pray. There you go. Let them stay home and pray, because that they can do. How many times you find the little old ladies that nobody thought could accomplish anything, just talking to a friend and sharing their hope with a friend. One friend. I heard a story, and I wish I could remember all the details, but I can't. But there was a little old lady who gave a tract to this man, to this young man. And she didn't think much of it because, she given tracts occasionally, but, especially when you think of a young man. In today's society, a lot of times you think of young men, they have no interest in spiritual things, but, I'm going to give it to him anyway. Who knows? Maybe the Lord will touch him somehow. That young man was touched. And he took it to heart. And he gave his heart to the Lord. And he committed his life to the Lord. And a few years later, he had become an evangelist. And many people, because of his preaching, surrendered their hearts to Jesus as well. Because he was a great preacher, right? I would like to say because one little old lady gave him a tract and encouraged him to connect with Jesus. We don't know what kind of impact we can have. And I'm going to tell you something. We always have an impact. Good or bad. Because of our conversations, because of our behavior, because of whatever in our lives, we always have an impact upon people. May we, however big an impact it is that we can have, make sure that it is a positive one. That it reflects Jesus Christ. And that it will impact the lives of those we come in contact with. And maybe none of us will be a great evangelist. Maybe none of us will convert thousands and thousands of people. But if our life can impact one individual and draw them to Jesus Christ, and if that is all we were capable of doing, we have fulfilled our mission. We have accomplished what God calls us to do. I'm not trying to say that all you need to do is impact one individual. I don't know what God's plan is for you. It reminds me a little bit of the evangelist that was going to do an evangelistic series, and they decided to pray. He decided to pray that God would give him 10 souls. And he earnestly prayed, and guess, at the end of the series, guess how many people gave their hearts to God? 10. Exactly what he had prayed for. And he says, what a fool I was. Why didn't I pray for 20? I don't know what plans God has for you. But I know He can use you to be a blessing. And I'd like to encourage you to seek diligently God's guidance, that your life may truly have an impact in the lives around you. It doesn't matter how big, how strong, how educated, how wealthy. That doesn't matter. What matters is that you commit yourself to serving God, and He will do the rest. I'm going to invite you to open your hymnals to hymn number 572. Give of your best to the Master. Let's stand together. Give of your best to the Master. Give of the strength of your youth. Throw your soul's fresh glowing ardor into the battle for truth. Jesus has set the example. Doubtless was he young and brave. Give him your loyal devotion. Give him the best that you have. Give of your best to the Master. Give of the strength of your youth. Clad in salvation's full armor, joining the battle for truth. Of your best to the Master. Give him first place in your heart. Give him first place in your service. Consecrate every part. Give, and to you shall be given. God his beloved Son gave. Gratefully seeking to serve him, give him the best that you have. Give of your best to the Master. Give of the strength of your youth. Clad in salvation's full armor, joining the battle for truth. Late on his love of the Master, naught else is worthy his love. He gave himself for your ransom, gave up his glory above. Give, and to you shall be given. God his beloved Son gave. Him our heart's oration, Give him the best that you have. Give of your best to the Master. Give of the strength of your youth. Clad in salvation's full armor, join in the battle for truth. O Lord, may our hearts truly be open to you, to your guiding in our lives, that we may be what you need us to be. That we may be a blessing, that we may be an encouragement, that we may be a challenge to those we come in contact with. But above all, that they may see Jesus in us. We pray in his precious name. Amen.